Welcome to the Discovering Leadership podcast. My name's Corbin Hannis. As usual, I'm joined by my co-host Carl Bowden from Exemplify Leadership. Carl, you want to tell us about what we're talking about today?
Yeah, today on the Discovering Leadership podcast, we're talking about relationships. How do we provide value and service to the people that we build relationships with in our business? So, the purpose of the Discovering Leadership podcast is to invest in you, our listeners. We want to instill the foundational principles of leadership within you. We want to help you build your relationships, help you craft strategy as it relates to your business or maybe your personal life. We want you to live to your most authentic self. So our goal is to build a community of leaders that seek to serve others. Now, we ultimately want to live by example. So what example do you want to live in the world? Now, for today's episode, we're talking about relationships and providing value and service to the people that we serve in our businesses. So, how do we establish a firm foundation in a client relationship? And what do we need to focus on that the client values? And then, once we know what the client values, how do we match the client values with maybe some of the services or products within our business? And then how do we make a difference in the lives of others based on the service that we provide? Now, today we are joined by Adam Brunin. Adam is the founder and owner of Navigation Wealth Management located in Fort Collins, Colorado. Adam entered the financial services industry in August of 2001 after 9 years in the U.S. Naval submarine community. After 3 years of working with a Fortune 100 company, Adam noted significant improvements that could be made by starting his own company, Navigation Wealth Management. Adam entered the independent advisory business in 2005, and he's also my brother. So, welcome to the podcast, Adam.
Thanks. I appreciate your full
Of
disclosure of the brotherhood. So, anyway,
of course, you got to.
Well, we really appreciate your
Well,
time,
Adam,
Adam. Thank you for joining us today.
yeah.
Do you want to kickstart us off and tell us a little bit from your perspective what you're doing in business nowadays?
What I'm doing in business nowadays is trying to avoid downturns in the stock market. That's what I'm trying to do. Doing a
yeah,
pretty good job of it, by
yeah,
the way, but still, that's what I'm trying to do.
yeah, it's pretty wild right now with the economy and inflation and everything, and
Yes.
it's got to be really hard to connect with some of your clients at the start with all of this chaos within the stock market. So I don't know, like how do you start a client relationship when there's so much chaos happening right now?
Uh, Ironically, right now they're usually the ones starting the conversation because they're in panic mode right now. And I think
Uh,
my job at this point is to keep them from jumping off the ledge, if you know what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
and calming them down a little
yeah,
bit and helping them understand that we can take care of them and that it's going to be okay. That's probably the biggest piece right now.
yeah. So, I mean, what's the process of engaging a potential client, whether you are in a state of chaos or maybe it's just a normal, you know, day in the stock market?
Yeah,
How do you engage those
yeah.
clients?
That's so. A lot of the time, at this point in my career, a lot of time, what happens is we're getting a referral from another client to have us talk to them. So usually our contacts are your typical phone call, or sometimes they're contacting us because of a referral that their friend is giving them. When we very first started, I would say that the mass majority of contacts were made through direct marketing and doing social security seminars and asset management seminars and things like that to folks that are usually 60 years old and older is our target market. So but once we get them into the office and sit down with them, it's a lot of what you're talking about. It's just trying to build relationships with them, helping them understand what we do, helping them understand that we have their best interest at heart, and going from there.
See, that makes a lot of sense. Adam, I kind of want to backtrack a little bit. You're talking about nowadays. It seems like your job is helping to talk clients off of that metaphorical ledge whenever they come and start to engage with you.
Mhm.
Can you give us any specific examples? I'd say without going into too much detail, obviously, can you give us any
Right.
examples of a story of a client where your services really made a difference in their life?
Sure. A specific example for me would have been in probably March of 2020 when COVID really set in. That was a big time where what we were doing made a big difference. Uh, the stock market, I don't know if you remember that timeline, but February 20th ish, somewhere in that time frame, all of a sudden the market really started to come down fast. In fact, that 1 month of March was the most precipitous decline in the stock market since 1931 during that time frame. And so you're talking about Great Depression era. We're going all the way back there. I had a client that called me and actually she emailed me and she said in her email something to the effect of, "Hey, I can't even look. Can you just tell me how bad it is?" And I said, "Oh my goodness!" So I call her. I'm talking to her on the phone, and she said, "I know it's bad. I'm in Texas. I can't get back to Colorado. I just need you to tell me how bad it is." I said, "Well, actually, your account is up right now." She said, "What? Isn't the stock market like crashing and everything?" And I said, "Yeah, it kind of is, but we moved everything over to bonds, so you're actually up quite a bit right now." She's like, "Oh my gosh, how do you do that?" And this is a lady who, her husband was or is now, he's got Alzheimer's, all kinds of different things like that. So, at the end of life, you don't want to be doing crazy things with your money. You want to know that someone's taking care of you, managing that money appropriately, and keeping you out of harm's way if it all hits the fan. So, I mean, that's what we're trying to do, and that definitely impacts people. You get referrals from those type of people because their loyalty is very high at that point.
Yeah, man. That's a great example too, because that was a huge drop. I remember that. I mean, I feel like it dropped at least 5 to 10,000 points or something.
It was
It
dramatic.
was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is that when she called you, you're like, it's okay. I got it handled.
Right.
No worries.
Right.
Your count's up,
Hmm.
you know? And I think that's something that, when we're dealing with people, we're providing our value or services to others. They know that you got their back
Yeah.
at all
Right.
times, you know?
Absolutely.
And you just, I mean, you showed that you're focused on them and what they wanted. But what do you do to find out what the client wants and what they value?
Yeah. First off, I say, when a client walks in, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down with them, talk to them, not as a financial professional, but just as another human being, and just help understand who they are. I go into if I am answering more questions than they're answering in the first 20 minutes, then I'm not really doing my job. And so, what I do is I will walk through an old. This is kind of crazy, but I walk through an acronym called FORM, Family, Occupation, Recreation, and Mutual Acquaintances. And I try to just use that as a format for me to remind myself of all the different things I want to talk to them about, because that helps me get to know them as a person. And the things I share in those first 20, 30 minutes, whatever it turns out to be, those are important things because they're talking about their family. They're talking about their kids, their grandkids. They're talking about hopes and dreams, what they did in their life, their occupation, different people we might know from some organization, whether that be church or the gym or something to that effect. Whatever it is, we're just trying to get to know each other. And once people, that's a kind of a cliche, but once people understand uh, how much you want to know about them, how interested you are in them. All of a sudden, they become just this person that will trust you a lot more. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, type of concept, you know. So
Yeah.
that's important for people to get through and get across.
Yeah, that's a quote that I bring up all the
Yeah,
time. It's by John
yeah,
Maxwell. I'm sure I've spoken it to you many times before, but Corbin and I, we talk about it all the time on the podcast.
hmm
People don't care how much you know until they know how much you
right,
care.
exactly.
It starts with the people.
hmm
Yeah,
Uh,
and Carl definitely brings up that quote here and there. I always say that's not a John Maxwell quote; that's a Carl quote, because it is to me at the very least. Nonetheless, I digress. Adam, you know, tell me a little bit about how do you help others, whether clients or potential clients, maybe it's somebody inside the firm, or even just another business relationship you have. How do you help others see the difference that can be made in their own lives through the services that you provide, the value that you can provide to them?
Yeah. One of my most senior rep, that's been with me the longest. One of the things that I have done with him specifically is not hold back on sharing the information in my head so that it will make him better. Despite the fact that he could potentially start his own firm or go someplace else or whatever the case is, I think once people see how much you're pouring into them, they understand how much you care about their success because you understand that their success is actually your success. They will do anything that you want them to. They realize how much you are vested in their success, and that's probably one of my biggest things that I do with everybody. But I say my most senior advisor because when he came into the business, he was just a couple years out of college. He was not able to make a phone call because the receiver on the phone weighed 4,000 pounds. If you know what I'm trying to say, emotionally, mentally, he couldn't make that phone call. And even when he called people, his script was shaky at best. And so I pulled him into my office. His the bullpen is right outside my office. I can hear the phone calls that he's making, and I would pull him into the office and I would just walk through how he did something or the nuances of how he said something, and not in a mean way or anything. I'm just trying to help him out, you know. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, that totally changed how I, did this or that." And he's very successful at this point. He's making plenty of money. He's got three daughters, all that different types of stuff that are important. But his family being the most important, and he sees the benefits that he's received from just my knowledge and guidance from that standpoint. So that was probably my best example of how to help somebody is just pour your information into them. They're going to do with it what they want, but they know that you care about them, and that's really what matters.
that's huge. And you held them accountable.
Yeah, somewhat.
You showed in a way, you brought them into your
Yeah,
office. You're like, hey, this is something that we could improve on, and you coached them in that process. You showed that you cared through basically the love of showing him what he could improve
right.
on. That's what it starts with, and then after that, he's like, oh, I didn't, I didn't think of it that way,
Right.
but he took the action based off of what you said, and it motivated him to be successful in gaining those
Right.
clients. So that's huge.
Yeah.
It starts with others, motivating them to be their best selves and in whatever position they're in.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Now, what kind of impact does navigation wealth management as a whole seek to make in the lives of others?
It's a good question. What I do here a lot is I'm building an algorithm to manage my clients. And so the impact that I have from that standpoint, in my opinion, is it is very uniform across all of my clients. So hopefully, the impact that we're having is we're gaining market share and helping more people in northern Colorado or in honestly I have clients all around the world at this point, but uh, you're helping them out as much as possible, have some solace when it comes to what their retirement looks like or what making money and earning money in the markets looks like, because that's a scary proposition for a lot of people out there. And if you can give them that type of peace when it comes to what they're doing in their portfolio, you've won more than just their pocketbook. You kind of win their heart at that point. It's pretty impressive. So I would say that's how we're impacting people.
Yeah. So gaining market share, winning the hearts of
Oh
others,
yeah,
and just helping give them stable, secure
yeah,
lives to provide for their families and all the people around them, it sounds like.
right.
So, Adam, I'm curious about this. Whether it's personally or professionally, what value do you seek to make in the lives of others?
Um, what do I seek to make that? I love podcasts, don't you? Random questions to
Uh,
just throw you off a little bit. Um,
Well, that's what we got that post production editing for. Don't worry.
no, here if I were to say if I could get everyone to how would you say be as vulnerable as they can possibly be within their comfort zone, that's what I would try to do. Is try to be as authentic with people and vulnerable with them, so that they know that what your true heart is. Because the mass majority of people in this world they're just trying to honestly they're just trying to get by. They're just trying to get through, and if they can do that, that usually they're good. Most people are not looking to hit a home run every time. Most people are not, people that if you're in baseball and you're batting 300, you're a Hall of Famer. I mean, that's pretty awesome. You don't have to hit it out of the park. You just have to be pretty good at what you do and just be at peace with that. So, for me, I would try to get people to understand the authenticity that's here, and they can be authentic with me also, so that we can have a really good relationship and understand what that means long term. Because what that really means is that we're going to argue a little bit. That really means that we're going to be able to have fun together, but in the end, we're still together and trying to accomplish this thing together. So hopefully, that's what I'm trying to do with most people
yeah. It's all about authenticity,
a lot of the time.
being honest. Yeah. And just be completely open with them and
Right?
true to yourself, but have them be true to
Yeah.
themselves and whatever they're
Yeah.
doing. I was curious, Adam, do you have an example of, you know, someone that has been really authentic to you, uh, to where you have kind of um, changed your mindset, I
Sure.
guess, in focusing on
Yeah.
authenticity?
Absolutely. Besides my wife. Um,
Yeah, it could be
yeah.
whatever.
No, we won't go there. Uh, from a business standpoint, I would say don't ever shy away from people that want to tell you you're wrong. I'm not. I don't know,
Mm,
maybe that sounds weird, but man, they're only trying to refine you. I mean, that's kind of a biblical principle of iron sharpening iron. I mean, it's a concept of if you're man enough to take that criticism and reflect on it a little bit and see if there's some truth in what somebody is saying to you, well, yeah, that can take you a long way. I mean, I can tell you from a business standpoint, I've had reps come in and tell me that, come walk in my office angry and say, "This is what's going on," that I'm barking at me. And I'm just like, whoa, whoa, okay, hold on a second. Why don't you tell me more about what's going on? And if you're just curious with them and just
mm,
ask them a couple questions, they feel like they're being heard, and they feel like they are,
Mm.
you know, a participant in the conversation, and it goes from barking to having an actual quality conversation. So I've seen that happen in great ways. I've had clients tell me that my algorithm is all jacked up. I said, and I, which makes me laugh because it works wonderfully. But there's always improvements, and um, ironically, if I can share a little different story here, I was at a conference where finally a professor from Northwestern admitted that there's no such thing as AI in investing. Machines don't learn, and they can't figure out the
Hmm.
stock market either. I thought that was pretty awesome. Which then makes me
Wow.
go, well, yeah, that's because you have to change constantly. There's this just if you could understand that there's constant change, then you're good. So a client will walk in and say, your algorithm's messed up because of this, and I say, okay, tell me more what you're seeing. And I actually have a client that I've got about 5 clients that are just as analytical as I am, and so they will tell me things like how I didn't capture all of the upside, or whatever the case was, or I didn't get out fast enough. I lost 3%, and I could have lost 2% or something, whatever the situation is. And I'll walk in and I'll say, okay, well, tell me about that. And if you're open to that criticism and you have the ability to, just harness that, oh buddy, you can make some changes that will benefit a whole lot of folks. And I've done that. I've done that in a multitude of ways. So I would say you definitely want to be open to criticism and be able to refine yourself or whatever process you have all the time. That's true intelligence, not artificial intelligence. There.
Mm. Those are some really good insights, Adam. In order to do that, to be open, it kind of sounds like we have to be humble. We have to humble ourselves to be open to that criticism in the first
Yeah,
place.
I think humility has
In a
something to
way.
do with it. I also think confidence has something to do with it too. Like, I
Mm.
am confident I am not right all the time. That's what I'm confident on. And I am open to that criticism. And how do you get there? Yeah, it's definitely through that door of humility and being able to do that. So that's all a part of it, definitely.
Yeah, confidence in
Sure.
yourself, and that's huge as a leader. I mean, we not only have to be confident in ourselves, but how do we lead by example to instill the confidence in others to where they can start taking in all that information, kind of like what you're doing with the business, to sharpen each other's iron, I guess, like you had mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. Sure. Absolutely.
One thing you had mentioned is asking questions. You have to ask questions to get to know people. And when we ask questions, that's when we find the answer. And that's when, sometimes things can get settled down. So what's one question that you typically ask to find the answer, I guess, in whatever service that you're trying to provide some of your clients?
Yeah. My number one question I ask people after I've gone through what I talked about with form and everything else, my number one question to ask people after that usually is something to do with, um, tell me your experiences with my industry. And you can apply that to anything. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you could ask that question. But the reason why I ask that is because notoriously people are in my office because of a bad situation with another advisor or something to that effect. And that just might mean that you had a personality conflict with somebody and you want to move, or that might mean that some client was a part of a Ponzi scheme. I've run into that multiple times, where I mean they are just straight up don't trust anybody, and they think I'm a crook, and I have to prove to them why I'm not, and they think the whole industry is full of crooks and that type of thing. So you want to know what experience people have had with someone like you so that you can break that stereotype or that mold that they have grown accustomed to. And if you can do that and do it successfully, you have a client for life at that point, because now they went from the complete lack of trust to the other side of this spectrum where they're going to trust you with pretty much everything once they get to know you and know that you are looking out for them and their best interests. So that's where I would go with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really about developing that circle of trust with all the people that you associate with, it sounds like too.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And then that just keeps compounding and compounding and compounding, and that allows you to grow the
Yeah.
business.
Hmm. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
just gaining emotional, psychological capital with a client. That's what you're trying to do, and so that you can gain physical capital, dollars and cents type of concept. So
Oh, yeah. See, that
that's
makes a
what it
lot of
boils
sense
down
to
to.
me. So as we start to wrap up, Adam, is there anything that you want to share with our podcast audience? Just say any final tips or items about your business.
About my business, no, I other than the algorithm side, I think that's the key to everything that we've done because we have we have sidestepped the extreme downturns of the last quarter of 2018. The all of COVID was phenomenal. I mean, I just the client loyalty after COVID was off the chart because you can't predict COVID, right? I mean, I'm
It's a
not going to
black
predict
swan
the next
event.
pandemic. The last major pandemic, like what we've seen, was in the early 1900s, right? And so you can't predict that. But when your algorithm sees it and sees what's happening in the charts and automatically moves you out of the market at just the right time, and you actually make money in the downturn, I mean, oh my goodness. I mean, who says that? Who says they can do that? And I'm not saying we're going to do it every time. And, I got to put my disclaimer out there of past performance, is not indicative of future results. But still, at the same time, I mean, even right now with all the stuff that's going on, we're sidestepping all this downturn and everybody else is participating in it. And from a business standpoint, that's pretty awesome. From a personal standpoint, you know, COVID changed a lot of things, and I'm doing a podcast with you right now that probably wouldn't have happened, 3, 4 years ago. The way that it was going right now because technology's changed, and just so I would say that the business changes rapidly, and you have to be that agent of change. If you're going to stay stagnant, wow, you're just going to become another fossil fuel. I mean, you're just a dinosaur. So you gotta be ready to move and change with everything else. So um, people are very important
Wow.
in business. Don't burn bridges. That's what I would say about business. You never know who you might need to call to help you out with something someday. So those would be my top three things I would talk about right there.
I really liked that, Adam. People are really important. We got to put people
Yeah.
first. And as a leader, we're the agent of change.
Yes.
We, and if we don't embrace that, then we become a dinosaur. We become extinct in business, I
Right.
guess. So that's huge.
You'll be fluid in business as a
Well,
dinosaur. You just be oil, and that's not very good either. So
yeah, that's not good.
Anyway,
Well, Adam, thanks. Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much for joining us on the
yeah,
podcast. You had so much value to give, and we just really appreciate you being
yeah.
on.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, for our listeners, remember that the next episode is going to continue with the relationship series, and we're going to be talking about defining the relationship. How do you define what type of relationship that you're in business or maybe in personal life? Now, you can catch all these episodes every other Tuesday, either on Spotify, Google, or Apple Podcasts.
And don't forget to check out Enturian.com. That's Enturian.com. Take a look at exemplifyleadership.com as well. Carl and I are posting updates on the podcast across all of our social media platforms and on our websites. Go make sure to take a look. Finally, if you want to take a look at the video version of the podcast and actually watch us interview all of our amazing guests, you can check out the Enturian YouTube channel. Again, one more time, that's Enturian.com. Now, last but definitely not least, we want to make sure to remind every one of our listeners out there that alone you might be able to survive, but together you can thrive. We'll see you on the next episode.